Atlantis Casino Resort Spa here in Reno. This was actually the place that I used to play at the most back in 2009, 2010 before the Pepper Mill opened its poker room. And this is the only place in town today with a 3-5 game. And that means that is the game that we are jumping in. Let's see how this goes. All right, we're 2 hours in here at the Atlantis, playing some 3-5 action here. And every once in a while a hand happens where you just kind of need to give credit to your opponent. And that's what happened here. So it actually happened when there were 3 limpers in a pot. And the small blind completes. And I'm in the big blind with Queen 7 of clubs. The flop comes out 8-6-3 with 2 clubs. Thought about just leading out, but decided against it with so many people in the pot. Under the gun player ends up betting out for 20. The hijack calls, the small blind calls, and I call in the big blind. The turn comes out the deuce of clubs, giving me a queen high flush. And the small blind instantly leads out for 200, an overbet. And I don't really see how I'm just immediately folding a queen high flush here. I don't love the idea of raising with it either because it seems like such a polarized bet. So that said, that leaves one other option. I make the call, and the river comes a brick. I believe it came the 10 of spades. The point being, it didn't bring in another club, and it didn't pair the board. And I'm now expecting the small blind to bet out big again, and then I'm gonna have to make a decision on what to do. Instead, he just checks. So I was perplexed by that, and now I feel like I have to bet. I don't see how I can just check back a queen high flush here on the end. So I bet the same amount that he just bet. I bet 200, and he shoves it all in. The check raise all in on the river. Check raises on the river, as I'm sure you know, are rarely bluffs. It just felt like the nuts to me. I just feel like you're gonna get shown the nuts all day long here in this spot. So I thought about it for a minute, and I ended up folding. I never saw what he had, but I have to give him credit because if he did turn the nuts, there were so many people in this pot that if he did turn the nuts like I suspect that he did, you should bet big because you're getting it in with other flushes. And he had been playing so tight on the day throughout, and he's clearly a pro, even though it's rare that in Reno you find a pro that I don't know. In this case, I think he's just visiting, but clearly a pro, playing very tight. I'm convinced I made the right laydown, though I didn't have the chance to find out. Either way, stuck big right out of the gate here at the Atlantis.
Right.
So I figured I'd record the rest of these hands voiceover style like I'm recording a package for the local news, something that I have a little bit of experience in. We'll pick it up with one hand where Under the Gun +1 opens to 15 and gets called by the cutoff. The small blind calls as well, and I'm in the big blind with 2 kings. I make it 60, and every one of those players calls. With $240 in the pot, the flop comes out 4-5-6 with 2 spades. The small blind checks. I bet $110. Under the Gun +1 makes the call. The others fold. So with $460 in the pot, we go to a turn which comes the 10 of hearts. I think about it for a while given the fact that I have just over a pot-sized bet left, and with so many draws on that flop, I want to deny him equity. I ultimately decide on shoving it all in. He thinks about it for a long time before finally making the fold. So I take one down there. Perhaps I could have gotten a little more if I went ahead and made a smaller turn bet, but he also may have gotten there. After that hand, I pick up pocket queens under the Gun +1, and I make it 20. The hijack calls, and the big blind calls as well. So with 60 in the pot, we go to a flop of Jack 6-7 with 2 spades. I bet 35. The hijack makes it 75. Not a fold that I'm going to make at this point on a jack-high board. I make the call. The turn comes to 3 of clubs. I check, and the hijack bets 200, and he leaves himself less than that left. I can't tell exactly how much that is, because he's got some of it in his hand. I slide out 275, thinking that that puts him all in. Instead, he ended up having more chips in his hand than I thought, so it ends up being just a call. The river comes another 6. I put him in for his final $90 or so, and despite the fact that he's already committed about 300 to the pot, he makes the fold. So clearly he was raising on a draw and did not get there, but we picked that pot up as well. Next hand, we're playing 4-handed. The cutoff opens to 15. I look down at 10s on the button and make it 45. The small blind is a local pro who has respect for my game and isn't going to be making some light calls. He comes in. The cutoff completes as well. So we're 3 ways to a pot of $135, and the flop comes out Jack-9 deuce rainbow. It gets checked to me. I bet 75. The small blind thinks about it and makes the call. Definitely not something I wanted to see. The cutoff folds and the turn comes an 8. He checks. I check it back, thinking that he would not be calling me with worse at this point. He could even be slow playing a big hand, looking to bring the cutoff along with us. The river comes the ace of spades. He leads for 150, which is odd, because I can have way more ace-kings than him in this spot, since I 3-bet pre-flop, bet the flop, and check the turn. I have a pretty easy fold here. He shows me 1 jack, which is good enough. Later tells me that he had the other jack. Next hand, it folds to me on the button, playing 5-handed. I have 2 black aces. I make it 15. The small blind makes it 45, with only a little over 100 behind. I try to get all of that money, but he thinks about it, and under the gun opens to 20 in the next hand. The cutoff calls, and I call on the button with ace deuce of clubs. The big blind calls as well, and with 80 in the pot, we see a flop of king 10-3 with 2 clubs. It gets checked to me. I bet 60, trying to take it down right now, but that doesn't work, as the original raiser under the gun and the owner of the best pizza place in Reno calls my bet. The turn comes an offsuit 5. I now add a gut shot straight draw, and he checks. I bluff for $110, and he proceeds to ask me a question.
What do you think, guys?
5 queens.
You have a flush draw? Yeah, a flush draw.
So he asked me what I thought he had, I nail it, and then he figures me for a flush draw. Looks like we both were right. Next hand, cutoff opens 15. I 3-bet to 50 with Jack-10 of spades. The big blind cold calls, and the cutoff calls as well. With 150 in the pot, the flop comes queen 7-4 with 2 spades. It gets checked to me, and I decide that I'll check it back, thinking I won't get too many folds from the big blind if he has a pair. The turn brings good news as it comes the 8 of spades, and it gets even better when the big blind bets out for 140, leaving himself 150 behind. I shove it all in, expecting a call, but I don't get one, as he makes a good laydown. So, racked up and booked a $730 win here at the Atlantis, and that is significant because I didn't mention this yet on this vlog, but brutal downswing to start the month of May. I actually posted this on Instagram, to Instagram stories. I went on a $4,000 downswing in just 3 days to start the month of May. And that hurts when you work in local television, let me tell you what. But I wasn't all that worried about it. I make a point, by the way, to occasionally post to Instagram and detail a loss. You know, everyone can post about their wins. I like to post about the losses too. You know, it's my life. I like to give you guys the inside look, what's really going on. I don't want to sugarcoat it. I don't want to make it seem like it's something that it's not. I'm giving you a real inside look at what it's like to play poker professionally as a side job. So, I hope some of you guys appreciate that. And I hope you guys enjoyed kind of the new format here with the voiceover style of hands, trying to get them in there quicker. Let me know what you think of that. And we might do some more of it if it works out. As always, I appreciate you guys watching these vlogs. If you haven't already, do me a favor and subscribe. Really appreciate it. It helps out the channel a lot. And hit the like button, the thumbs up button that is, and the subscribe button as well. Follow me on Instagram at Ben Deach, and I will see you next time.